Welcome back. Now we will review Chapter 4, which talks about corporate social responsibility. Hopefully, you will remember from Chapter 2 that the movement toward increasing corporate responsibility began in the 1960s, but has really gained emphasis in the last 10 years or so. Daniel Patrick Moynihan was a well-known American politician and sociologist. Here he is quoting William Jennings Bryan, who was another well-known politician and a lawyer. You may remember him as a great opponent of Darwinism. There was a movie made about the monkey trial called Inherit the Wind, which portrayed William Jennings Bryan. It's an old movie, you may not remember it. Anyway, the quote reads, "Years ago, William Jennings Bryan once described big business as nothing but a collection of organized appetites." Now, what does this quote have to do with anything? Well, in addition to satisfying all the appetites or interests of all of its stakeholders, a business must also respond to all of the demands or appetites of its consumers and society. So, as consumer interests move toward valuing social benefits like going green or eliminating child labor, corporations must pay attention to these interests. The text uses this example, the new lemonade stand. Consider the age-old icon of childhood endeavors, the lemonade stand. Within a CSR context, it's as if today's thirsty public wants much more than a cool, refreshing drink for a quarter. They're demanding said beverage be made of juice squeezed from lemons, not sprayed with insecticides toxic to the environment, prepared by persons of appropriate age in kitchen conditions which pose no hazard to those workers. It must be offered in biodegradable paper cups and sold at a price which generates a fair, livable wage to the workers, who, some might argue, are far too young to be toiling away making lemonade for profit anyway. It's enough to drive young entrepreneurs straight back to the sandbox. All right, hopefully you are beginning to get the point. The text defines corporate social responsibility as the actions of an organization that are targeted towards the achievement of a social benefit over and above maximizing profits for its shareholders and meeting all its legal obligations. Previously, businesses thought that they only had to meet legal requirements and make a profit. Now business is facing demands from activists on issues that were not previously part of their strategic plans, like protecting the environment or providing healthy food. Many people take an instrumental approach to CSR, which is the perspective that the only obligation of a corporation is to maximize profits for its shareholders in the provision of goods and services that meet the needs of their customers. Milton Friedman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, has argued that from an ethical perspective, it is actually unethical for a corporation to do anything other than deliver profits to its investors. Spending money or foregoing profits to satisfy other special interests is a breach of the management contract. Of course, this assumes that there are no external consequences to the actions of the corporation and its managers. If you are interested in the full text of Milton Friedman's article, which is "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits," it's in the back of our text, starting on page 211. The social contract approach is the perspective that a corporation has an obligation to society over and above the expectation of its shareholders. This argues that since the corporation depends on society for its existence and continued growth, there is an obligation for the corporation to meet demands of society and maintain a longer-term perspective than just the delivery of quarterly earnings. I think we can all agree that corporations do not exist in a vacuum. Their actions impact customers, employees, suppliers, and communities. Naturally, some of these impacts will be positive and others will be negative. Of course, recognizing the interrelationships of these groups leads beyond concern for the bottom line, and taking action that goes beyond generating profit inevitably attracts a lot of attention. Your text uses the examples of the tobacco industry and the alcohol manufacturers. Initially paying attention to the desires of its customers, the tobacco industry made billions, but this led to government intervention because of the industry's denial of the consequences of smoking. In contrast, the alcohol manufacturers recognized that by showing an interest in their consumers' well-being, like by starting a don't drink, don't drive campaign, they were able to escape much of the backlash felt by the tobacco industry. So what are the social trends that are the driving forces behind CSR? Joseph Keefe of New Circle Communications identified these 5 major trends. First of all, transparency. Companies can no longer sweep things under the rug. With the rise of social media and intense media scrutiny, we know that nothing is secret anymore. In a related trend, knowledge. Consumers and investors have more information at their disposal and can wield more influence. With the increased interest in protecting the environment, companies are under more pressure to demonstrate environmentally sound plans and strategies. Globalization discusses the new stage of capitalist development without public institution to protect society. The greatest period of social reform in the U.S., which produced child labor laws, minimum wage laws, worker compensation laws, to name a few, was the result of the government intervening to fix the excesses of capitalism. As capitalism spreads globally, often without strong governments to protect society, there is pressure on corporations to step up their protection. In a very related trend, failure of the public sector. Many developing countries are governed by dysfunctional regimes, so people have lost confidence in the public sector to address social problems and are expecting the private sector to do so. So with increasing pressure to demonstrate CSR, many corporations have begun to use a triple bottom line approach in their annual reports. Corporations have always measured their financial bottom line, that is, how much money is left over after all the bills have been paid from the revenue generated from their sales. Now they are attempting to measure their social responsibility as well as their environmental responsibility. Now this is often criticized as just using popular rhetoric, since these activities are often very difficult to measure. Here is Coca-Cola's Triple Bottom Line Citizenship Report from 2004. Our company has always endeavored to conduct business responsibly and ethically. We have long been committed to enriching the workplace, preserving and protecting the environment, and strengthening the communities where we operate. These objectives are all consistent with, indeed essential to, our principal goal of refreshing the marketplace with high-quality beverages. Kind of lame, isn't it? While it sounds great, there are no solid facts or measurements to support these claims. It's interesting to read the article Banning the Real Thing on page 72 of our text and compare what happened to the assertions in the citizenship report. Now, organizations have jumped on the CSR bandwagon by adopting one of 3 types of CSR. First is ethical CSR. Organizations pursue a clearly defined sense of social conscience in managing their financial responsibilities to shareholders, their legal responsibilities to their local community and society as a whole, and their ethical responsibilities to do the right thing for all their stakeholders. These organizations have typically incorporated their beliefs into their core operating philosophies. The second type of CSR is altruistic CSR. Here, organizations take a philanthropic approach by underwriting specific initiatives to give back to the company's local community or to designated national or international programs. Technically, corporations take money that might have gone to shareholders and give it back. Determining what cause gets the money can be truly tricky, and shareholders may be put in the position of supporting causes they may not support on their own. Finally, there is strategic CSR. Here, philanthropic activities are targeted towards programs that will generate the most positive publicity or goodwill for the organization. This can be perceived as self-serving behavior on the part of the organization. The text provides several examples of each of these types of CSR. The text provides a great deal of insight into calculating your carbon footprint. Without going into too much detail, you can actually buy positive emission credits from projects around the world to offset your negative emissions. In this way, you can reduce your carbon footprint with money without changing any of your bad behavior. Well, this sounds a bit strange. It was actually ratified by the Kyoto Protocol, an agreement between 160 countries that became effective in 2005. Soon after this, the European Carbon Investors and Services Association was formed to promote standardization of carbon trading on a global scale. You will read much more about these strange activities in your text. So that is Chapter 4. The written assignment for this chapter will give you the opportunity to examine one of my favorite businesses demonstrating CSR, Ben & Jerry's. As always, if you have questions, you can email me or post on our questions, issues, and concerns discussion forum. I'll be back for Chapter 5.